Welcome to Methods to Optimize Water Resilience and Reliability. As just a reminder, we do have a Spanish channel. Our interpreter, Carlos, is already in the Spanish channel. To get there, you can find a globe icon in your Zoom panel, and you can go ahead and click on that and select Spanish, and that will take you to the Spanish audio section. You'll still see the speakers, you'll still see the slides there. A couple of additional housekeeping points. Throughout the conversation today, we would love to invite you to submit your questions. Simply click on the Q&A panel in your Zoom dashboard. It says Q&A with some quote bubbles. Click on that, and then you can type in your question. Just hit enter or return on your computer, and that will get to me. And we're going to hold those questions until the very end. Joshua is only going to talk for 20 or 30 minutes, and then we have a good 15 or 20 minutes to answer any and all of your questions. We're also happy to stay a little bit over that 45 minutes if we have more questions than we can get through in 45. So you can also enter notes or questions into the chat if you prefer. We'll state your question anonymously, so feel free to be open and open in your remarks and your questions throughout the session. All right, Joshua, I want to hand it over to you to get us kicked off.
All right, thank you, Tiffany. Welcome, everyone. My name is Joshua Hagmark. I'm the Water Resources Manager, and glad to have you back today. I've seen a few names out there I recognize from the last few Lunch and Learns. Thank you for taking the time to learn, engage, and interact with us as the city works to update our long-range water supply plan. We're currently working on an update to our long-range supply plan, and in the planning document forecasts our water demands and water supply needs for the next 30 years. This plan is updated every 10 years, and it was last updated in 2011. And since that time, a lot has changed in the water supply world. In other Lunch and Learn presentations this week, we've talked about how we develop future water demand projections, how the city approaches water conservation, and of course, we've talked about our current water supply portfolios. Today, my goal is to talk about what options exist for optimizing water resilience and reliability. And for those who are not sure what the difference between resilience and reliability, we're going to answer that question too. Next slide. So overview today, what is water supply resilience and reliability? And what are the options to increase the city's resilience and reliability? And we're going to be talking about water loss controls, water conservation, desalination, groundwater banking and storage, recycled water, including potable reuse. Next slide. And the next slide. So definitions of resilience. So resilience is the availability of water supply in response to threats or emergencies. This is basically the planning for and operating through and recovery from a major disruption. How long are demands not met? How long is the recovery? Reliability kind of speaks more to the long-range plan. The availability of water sources over time under changing conditions. Maintaining water service over long periods of time. Next slide. So in prior presentations, we went over in detail our city's water supplies. In this presentation, I'm going to just quickly summarize that. And if you'd like to know more, I recommend going back and watching the prior presentation where we got into the city's diverse supply mix. So I'm going to start off with a quick way I believe to help everyone understand is the city of Santa Barbara in many ways is like an island. We have the 4,000-foot San Ynez Mountains to the north and the Pacific Ocean to the south. And in so many ways, including how our staff and resources get here, are very constrained. And so is our water supply planning. The city, starting with our drawing here, the city to the north, we have a state water project comes into Lake Cachuma. That state water originates in Northern California, flows through the Delta, and through various reservoirs and canals makes its way ultimately to Cachuma. We have the Cachuma supply, which feeds the city through Tecolote Tunnel. And also on the San Ynez River, we have Gibraltar Reservoir, which is a city-owned facility. And that water gets to the city through Mission Tunnel, which is just shy of a 4-mile tunnel that runs through the San Ynez Mountains. All of that water ends up in Laurel Reservoir, which is located up at the top of San Roque Road. And that's kind of a forebay for all of the city's surface waters. It comes together before it is treated at our Cater Water Treatment Plant and distributed to the city of Santa Barbara, and then also to regional partners like Montecito and Carpinteria. The city also has a few groundwater wells. We also have a recycled water system that feeds outdoor landscaping needs, largely for commercial use. And then, of course, we have the desalination plant, which was recently added. And last but not least, we also have water conservation, which I'll talk about it's a major contributor to our supply planning. Next slide. Next slide. So I'm going to start off with talking about water loss controls. So reducing system-wide water loss is a significant effort that the city has been undertaking for a while. And the state has also caught on to that more recently and has been working on regulations to help water agencies to better define their losses and be able to better account for their water. And there are real losses and apparent losses. And when I say real losses, that's water that leaks from the city's water system through various joints and pipes versus apparent losses, which is water that may get through a water meter and not be accounted for. And losses are factored into the city's water demands. So as we've been talking about this week, the city's water demands, they have included water losses. So a description of some of the challenges with this. So it's difficult to grasp the size of the city's water system, but if you were to take the pipe that feeds the city's Santa Barbara's customers and you laid them end to end, the pipe would reach from Santa Barbara to Sacramento. That's 300 miles of pipe. And along that 300 miles of pipe, there are 27,000 holes cut into that pipe, and those are connections to each one of our customers. And so to kind of get the gravity of the challenges of controlling water loss, you kind of have to understand the perspective of the system. We have an active, let me see, next slide. So the city's current water loss is approximately 1,000 acre-feet a year, or about 10% of our current water demands. No system will be 100% water loss free. Some of the best systems, brand new systems are somewhere close to 5%, but even that's a challenge. The city is working to improve water loss. We are currently working on an AMI implementation. We're wrapping up the pilot for that now and actually are doing vendor selection and hope to get started this summer on let me back up, advanced metering infrastructure. These are in essence smart water meters that will be constantly watching water usage and will allow our customers to view their water usage online and also set some parameters in which they want to be notified if there's unusual water usage. We think this is going to be a helpful tool not only in helping our customers to conserve, but we also think it'll be helpful and allow us to better understand when we're putting water into the system, how much is leaving the system at the same time. We've also just wrapped up a meter replacement. We've spent the last 5 years replacing all 27,000 water meters in the city. It was a huge effort, but that is a big element of getting control over your water loss. And then finally, the other big element that we're working on is the water main replacement. We've been replacing 1% of the water system annually for the last 30 years. And we've recently increased that goal to 2% a year with the support of City Council, recognizing that we have an enormous amount of pipe that are, I think our average pipe is around 75 years old, and they're reaching the end of their useful life. And so we're committed to about 10 million a year to replacement of our water mains. We also routinely have to flush our water system. In the past, we would open up fire hydrants and flush the system. And we've, about 4 years ago, we purchased a piece of equipment that allows us to flush the water system without dumping that water down the drain. So really trying to get our handle on the water loss. So state regulations are moving through the system, and we expect sometime in the spring of 2021 to see some regulations from the state on water loss monitoring and controls and goals. The city's FY19 losses were around 27 gallons per connection per day. That's the unit of measurement that the state is headed towards. The median loss in the state was somewhere around 37 gallons. And we think an achievable city goal is somewhere around 25 gallons per connection per day, which equates to about a 60 acre-foot a year savings. So there's a value to tracking down these leaks and shutting them down. Next slide. So water conservation is, we bring that up as a supply because we really believe we can still squeeze more out of the community while still enjoying the same lifestyle that we have. I know there were fears back in the 90s that with further conservations, Santa Barbara was going to have rock front yards and cactuses. And clearly that hasn't happened. We've become a much more water efficient community. We still have beautiful native front yards and landscaping, yet we're using significantly less water. And still to this day, half of the city's water usage is outdoors. So there's still a lot of savings there. The city has a robust water conservation program, and we provide free water checkups. We'll come out to your home, help you better understand your water usage, inform you about rebates. We have also rebates for mulch, which is a great way to save outdoor water. We also work with our commercial, industrial, and institutional users to better improve their efficiency. And then we also have rebates for gray water, or not rebates, we have programs to help people convert their systems over to gray water and even rainwater classes. The city has been a leader in conservation, and we were recently just awarded, recognized as a platinum water conservation program. And I think it speaks to the need and how much we can produce here. I got a next slide. I want to kind of just, for those who tuned in earlier this week, we went through this slide, but really just want to quickly go through it again. What we see along the bottom is rainfall in the bar graph, and the yellow is drought cycles that we've experienced. The blue line here is population. And you can see how it's grown over the years, and then it's basically flattened out in the 80s. And then the green here is water usage, and you can see how it climbed pretty steeply with development, and then it's flattened off and has actually started to trend down. And a lot of that efficiency has come from changes in the plumbing code. I think education, understanding of where your water's going, and has made a huge difference. And in fact, the forecast for water conservation in the future has us saving 2,500 acre feet a year by 2050 from continued efforts to in conservation and changes in the plumbing code. I think one of the things that it always throws people off when I talk about this, but population growth does not always mean more water use. I'm going to let that sink in because that's a tough one. We've become a more efficient community. I think still living at the high level of standard and enjoying a beautiful city, and yet we're learning to do that with the same water that we did in the 1950s. It's quite remarkable, and I think that there's still more we can do and still live and have that beautiful community. Next slide. So as I mentioned, our plan right now with the that we're working on has us saving 2,600 acre feet of water per year by 2050 as a result of changes in the plumbing code and water conservation efforts. So as we continue to grow as a community, we also have this added benefit of conservation, which will make our water go further. Next slide. Added in 2017 is the Charles E. Meyer Desalination Plant, which I should back up, was actually built in the 90s. And that project was originally built with a partnership with Montecito and Goleta water districts. After the drought was over, our partners no longer wanted to participate in the facility, and it was put in long-term standby. During this drought, and as part of this long-term water supply plan, we restarted the facility and got it back up and running. And it's currently producing about 30% of the city's demands. It's permitted for up to 10,000 acre feet a year, but it's currently producing just over 3,000. And it's a drought-proof local supply, which is really important when we start talking about reliability and resiliency. It is powered, our goal is to power this facility with 100% renewable energy starting in 2022. And there continues to be opportunities for regional partnership. For those who've been following this, we recently executed an agreement, a 50-year agreement with the Montecito Water District to share in some of the water produced from this facility, which has benefits not only to Montecito, but to city customers in the form of cost sharing. Next slide. Groundwater banking. Most people don't think about the groundwater basins as storage, but like Kachuma, underneath the ground sits the potential for water storage. And the city has been exploring these. In fact, it was helpful during this last drought. We had water banked in Kern County, actually, that we were able to have delivered during the drought when we needed it. And I think what we're planning to do is continue to pursue that. And there are kind of two different options. There's a groundwater banking, which is where we put it in, the idea of getting it back in the future, and they actually put the water back in the ground, versus in lieu transfers. And this is where, for example, we might provide water for agriculture in the Central Valley or even in Santa Barbara County. And when they take that water, they're not pumping it from their groundwater basin, which makes it available in to do with that water if we don't need it here in Santa Barbara. So looking at how we might leverage the State Water Project to store that water at other locations around the state, preferably along the Central Coast branch of the pipeline, which turns off in Kettleman City, for those who know where that is, and passes through San Luis Obispo County and into Santa Barbara County and even at Lake Kachuma. So we are currently exploring that now with the CCWA, that's the Central Coast Water Authority, and that is the agency at which all Santa Barbara state water users are able to work with the state in DWR. Next slide. Recycled water, as many of you may know, the city has had a recycled water system since the late 80s, actually. And it continues to provide a huge benefit to our customers in offsetting the need for potable water. We currently have a demand for about 1,000 acre-feet a year, or 10% of our current demand. And the water is primarily used for landscaping. There are some areas where it is used for flushing public toilets, but for the most part, it's pretty minor compared to the landscaping demands. We're able to supply water to the Muni Golf Course and Montecito Country Club, along with all the city parks located along Carrillo, and then also along the Mesa area, and also including some schools along the way as well. So it's been a huge help in helping to offset potable water, but expansion of the recycled water system is complicated. It costs about $1.5 million per mile to expand the recycled water system. And so it takes a lot of water demand to really make expansion of the current system pencil out. And I think the challenge, which I'm going to get to on the next slide, is that potable reuse is on the horizon. The state has been working on creating regulations that would work for the city. And I'm going to step back a little bit and talk. So the city in 2016, 2017 did a potable reuse feasibility study. We wanted to see what potable reuse would do for the city. And again, potable reuse is taking our wastewater and treating it to drinking water standards. So we wanted to see what the potential was there, how would we do it, and where we ended up with is a pretty detailed plan that has us treating our wastewater to drinking water standards, and then pumping it up and into, as you may recall earlier, to Laurel Reservoir, where we would blend it with our surface waters, and then it would get treated again at our Cater Water Treatment Plant. So this concept is pretty well documented now. However, there's no regulations that support that type of potable reuse. And so the state is actively working on that now. We're told we should expect something in the 2025 time period in which at least some type of draft regulations would be out. And so we'll be watching that. I think it has a significant potential. Up to 5,000 acre-feet of water, almost 50% of our supply could potentially come from recycling our wastewater. But it does require a large capital investment. Right now, we're estimating somewhere between 150 to 200 million to do a potable reuse facility. And to put that in perspective, we just spent about 70 million to restart the desalination plant. So it's a pretty significant jump. And of course, potable reuse is going to be energy intensive, which just, again, reinforces why we need to continue to invest and make that transition to renewable energies. So with that, I have a kind of a summary slide here, the last slide. And kind of pulling together all of the different options that I just talked about. And the takeaways, the city is well positioned to adapt to future water challenges as a result of good water supply planning. And as mentioned, we are actively pursuing system water losses through numerous projects, including the implementation of advanced metering infrastructure and ongoing water main replacement. Ongoing efforts to continue to invest in water conservation are expected to yield 2,600 acre-feet of annual savings by 2050. And we have planning and permits are in place to increase desal production to up to 10,000 acre-feet a year should demand call for it. Groundwater banking and storage remains untapped. Options that could significantly improve and leverage our state water allocation and facilities. And of course, the potential to increase the use of recycled water for potable reuse is anticipated to be an option in the next decade. With the options above, I feel confident that the city has the tools and is well positioned to ensure this community has sufficient options to adapt to future water supply challenges. And with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Dakota Corey, who's going to talk a little bit about Water Vision Month, and then we will come back and see if we can answer your questions.
Thank you, Joshua, for that informative presentation. I think it's very exciting when we look to the options that we have in the future. I also want to thank everybody for participating today in our Water Vision Month Lunch and Learns. This is our 4th Lunch and Learn for the week. And I want to encourage you to continue to engage with us throughout the month of October. And specifically, we have options for learning, engaging, and interacting. On the Learn piece, we have several online videos available at our project website, and the website is located at the bottom of the slide. So you can see that it's santabarbaraca.gov/watervisionmonth. And there you'll find 4 different videos that better dive into the supply planning effort that the city is currently undertaking. And you'll also find 4 videos that dive into a couple of our different supplies, the State Water Project, Desal, Kachuma, and Gibraltar Reservoir in greater detail. So please enjoy those videos on your own time. They're available at the website whenever you would like to check them out.
And just a reminder, Dakota, we are working on translating at least half of those videos into Spanish within the next few weeks.
Awesome, thank you. With the Engage piece, we have a really exciting social media opportunity for the community to really get involved and express their values and concerns around our water supply planning effort. So this is our Engage piece of the project, and you'll see a screenshot here on your slide of our social pinpoint site. And on this site, you can leave comments, you can read other people's comments and engage in discussion. And we're really hoping to elicit quite a bit of feedback from our community as we undertake this water vision planning effort. We would really like to develop a plan that reflects the community's values and needs. So check out our social pinpoint site, again, at our project website.
And that social pinpoint site can also be translated into Spanish just by clicking, there's a tab on the left that says view in Spanish with instructions there in Spanish. But it's as simple as clicking on a icon in the top left corner of the social pinpoint site, and the entire page will be translated into Spanish. Perfect.
And finally, we encourage you to interact with us. And we've had some great participation this week in our Lunch and Learn webinars. Today's webinar is the 4th out of 5 total. And so tomorrow we'll be back one more time with an open house panel question and answer session. So we'll have several staff members available to answer any and every question you have about the water supply plan or water in general. And we really hope to engage and have a great conversation tomorrow with you at that presentation, also at noon. So that concludes our presentation for today, and we're ready to answer questions.
Great. So one of the easier questions, we'll start there, is will these presentation slides be made available? So for everyone, absolutely. We will be posting a PDF of the slides as well as the recording, at least in the English audio channel version, to the website within the next day or so. But let's move on to the tougher questions. This one actually is, I think, probably a good reference to where our water comes from presentation. But the question is, can you list the sources of supply, state water, Kachuma, etc., and the cost per acre foot for each, and the percentage that we use from each source each year? And I know, Dakota, you did cover a little bit of that in the Where Our Water Comes From presentation.
Yeah, I can go ahead and take a stab at that. And I think I'm going to give out rough numbers because it really depends on how much we get. For example, uh, during the drought, when we weren't getting any water into Gibraltar, you still had those carrying costs of maintaining the structure and the staffing to maintain the roads, and yet the water you got from that source may have been, very little. So the unit cost kind of varies. So I'm going to throw out kind of just rough costs that kind of fluctuate, but of course Dakota may be able to jump in and add to that. So for example, our state water, again, it depends on how much the allocation is that year. That water probably can vary from anywhere from $1,000 an acre foot to well over $2,000 an acre foot. Groundwater, typically groundwater, and we have different forms. Some require more treatment than others, depending on the well and the water quality there. But groundwater varies somewhere between $300 an acre foot to $700 an acre foot, depending on what kind of treatment is required. We do have some very difficult groundwater here, and it's not of a health concern, but it can have iron, manganese, and sulfur in it. None of those pose a public health risk, but they do require removal to make it not objectionable to drink, bathe, and shower in. Recycled water, this is one that throws a lot of people off. Our recycled water is actually some of our most expensive sources. Price is somewhere around $1,200 an acre foot for that water. And that really just includes the cost of operating that facility. With all of these prices that I'm giving you, that does not include the capital investment, the cost of building Gibraltar, the cost of Kachuma. These are just the operating costs associated with these supplies. Desal, the operating costs for that are around $1,400 an acre foot. And what else? Did I get all the supplies?
Kachuma.
Oh, and Kachuma. Kachuma water, again, averaged out is somewhere around $400 to $500 an acre foot.
And I know it. Oh, go ahead, Dakota.
I was just going to say, I wanted to add on to Joshua's answers because there was a few more parts to the question in terms of how much we use each year. And I'm not somebody that's good at keeping numbers in my head, but I did provide that information in the Where Our Water Comes From presentation on Tuesday, which will be available on our website. And one thing that is important to mention there, and I think Joshua did touch on this, is that it really varies from year to year and what supplies are available. So in wet years, when we have lots of surface water from Lake Kachuma or Gibraltar Reservoir, our supply mix is heavy in those two supplies because they're some of our least cost supplies. And then in drought years, when that surface water is unavailable or really limited, we use a lot more state water, groundwater, and desalination. And so that mix changes considerably. And there are some graphs in the presentation that I presented on Tuesday that compare kind of normal year usage and drought year usage.
So some of the strategies with that, for example, with Gibraltar, it's a fairly small reservoir, and kind of our strategy there is to, if we have water there and it's water that we can treat, because certainly during the Thomas fires, we're really challenged to treat that water to drinking water standards. But this year was great. The reservoir filled and spilled. And so we've been using a lot of Gibraltar water this year, which has been fantastic. And we're making room now in that reservoir for hopefully another plentiful water year. We hope to fill the reservoir again this year. So there's a lot of strategies go into it. The same thing with Kachuma. When it's near full, we'd like to try and pull down that reservoir and use our allocation. And then as the reservoir drops, we tend to shift and start using more of our other supplies like groundwater and state water.
Great. So the next question, it was mentioned that the desal, I think you mentioned this, Joshua, the desal facility will be powered by renewable energy by 2022. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
What's the source of that energy and how will that reduce the cost?
So the city is moving forward with what is it called? Clean
Community choice energy.
Community choice.
It's community choice energy, but it's Santa Barbara Clean Energy. I think that's what it's called. So the city is basically becoming a power procurer. So we will be going out and buying electricity on the market starting in 2021 for residential. So late 2021, they're going to be buying power for renewable, for residential. And residential customers will have an option. They can stick with the SCE's blend of power, which is about, I think it's 35 or 40% renewable, or they can opt for 100% renewable. There is an added cost increase associated with that. But it's also stimulating an economy, an industry that the city leaders are interested in pursuing. And so with that, we will be part of that, and we will be in 2022 that 100% renewable energy will be available for all commercial and industrial electric users, and that includes all of our water facilities. And the intent there is to power our facilities with 100% renewable. The city is still working to procure those contracts, but likely a majority of that power, and I know they've had several presentations, a lot of that I think comes from the Mojave area, and that does come from some hydro. There's certain hydro facilities that qualify for 100% renewable. Not all hydro facilities qualify for that, but if there's want more information on that, we'd be happy to send you more information on Santa Barbara Clean Energy. But we are excited to kind of tackle that. I believe that's the single most impactful element of the desalination facility operation is its electrical use. When we looked at how much greenhouse gas emissions came from desal's electrical usage, it ends up being less than 1% of the community's greenhouse gases, but it's still a significant contributor overall. So wanting to tackle that, and I think that hurdle will really help also to usher in potable reuse in the future.
I think the other half of that question, Joshua, is will purchasing that renewable energy actually reduce the energy cost at the desal plant, or will it change the cost of energy?
It will change the cost. Like I mentioned, right now we're paying about $1,500 an acre foot, and I expect it'll probably add another $50 an acre foot to the price of the desalinated water.
Okay. So it won't reduce the price. It'll actually increase the price
right.
of energy with the benefit of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Mm-hmm. Okay. The next question, let's see, has the city of Santa Barbara worked with other city water facilities on conservation or water conservation goals?
I can go ahead and take that question. The answer is yes. There's a countywide regional partnership where each of the water agencies within Santa Barbara County pool resources. The efforts for that group are largely in the public outreach sphere. So you'll see advertising on like public transportation and billboards. And so we partner with the community to have, or the county to have a county-wide messaging around water conservation. I believe the mulch rebate program is also county-wide, but there's regular meetings with each of the water conservation staff from each of the different water agencies in the county, and we do partner to look for cost savings because of economies of scale, and also just good opportunities to have cohesive programs.
Thank you, Dakota. The next question, I didn't hear any reference to climate impacts, potential loss of state water due to reduced snowpack, sea level rise, etc. For example, are you considering moving the desal and reclaimed water facilities because of sea level rise or the threat of it? And have you factored in potential reduced water supply from the state or seawater intrusion into groundwater supply? So kind of the impacts of climate change.
Right, and those are great questions, and I kind of we'll touch on it, but I think we talked a little bit more in detail in our presentation where we talked about all the different supplies. I think that's the key. I mean, if the key is diversity here too, and that's kind of what we've been getting at for the last 20 years with our water supply planning, is really trying to diversify. And the idea here is that if the state water project goes down, we still can meet customer demands. If Tecolote Tunnel collapses, we still have supplies to meet the basic health and safety needs of our community. If desal goes down, we have the ability to transition to other supplies. And so we are in a position that we can actually lose a few of our supplies and still be able to meet the basic health and safety needs of our community. And that's really important. And I think it speaks to the impacts of climate change. I know in the planning horizons that the city is currently looking at, let me see if I can remember them. We had a 2030, 2060, and 2100. And we did not see any impacts to desal through 2060. And that assumed a pretty aggressive sea level rise scenario. And again, desal is somewhat elevated in where it is located, and so is the wastewater treatment plant across the street. But certainly we have some big issues to tackle as a community about how we're going to deal with climate change and sea level rise in particular. You know, you put up a seawall, then you set you down a certain set of decision making, and if you decide we're going to retreat as a community, it sets us into a different set. So certainly recognizing that you have the impacts potentially for sea level rise that would impact potable reuse, that impacts desal. And then you also have the rainfall. We are actively looking into how climate change may impact rainfall. I think what we've concluded is that drier dry times and wetter wet times, and how do you plan your water supplies around that. And I think as we're working through this planning effort, we are looking at how we can leverage those wet times to either store water in our small groundwater basins that we have here, or how we could store our state water allocation in groundwater basins of surrounding along the state water project. So lots of different ideas there, but I think the whole kind of concept that we're working on here with our update of our long-term water supply plan is exactly speaking to those threats in the future.
Can I just add on real quick too, to say that part of our long-term water supply plan is a series of technical memorandums where we explore different supply risks and uncertainties and opportunities in greater detail. And we will be releasing a technical memorandum on the effects of climate change on Lake Cachuma and Gibraltar Reservoir. And we hope to have those publicly available in early November. But all throughout the technical analysis for the long-term water supply plan, we are looking at the effects of climate change. So we've analyzed how climate change might affect demand in the future. We're looking at how it might affect our various supplies, including Cachuma and Gibraltar and the State Water Project. And then through the city's sea level rise efforts, we're looking at the facility impacts. And so I do want to say that climate change is on the forefront of this planning effort, and it's integrated into all aspects of it.
And I'd also just add to what Dakota and Joshua had said, in some of those videos that are up on the Water Vision Month website, we cover a couple of these topics in layman's terms, but also a little bit more in depth. And I did notice one of those videos is not up, so I'll check with you on that, Dakota. There's a video that is talking about the risks and uncertainties that the technical team has surfaced and kind of how they're analyzing that. and then also what goes into creating a water supply plan. And so it goes all the way from analyzing the current supply to the future supply and those risks and uncertainties. So I think there's what we want to encourage everyone to do is keep learning. These are great questions. We do have one more question. This is in relationship to this state water project. What is the reason the city is not taking all of its state water project availability for delivery each year, and in turn resting groundwater extraction and desal production?
So the planning that goes into it, we certainly are looking to leverage the most out of our state water project allocation. So for example, this year we took our state water allocation and we used that to pay down water debt that the city has. During the drought, the city borrowed water from other state water contractors who didn't need that water, and we borrowed that to meet our customers' demands during the drought. And that was really critical. And so now we're paying down that debt using current year allocations. Once we've paid off that debt and our groundwater basins are still in recovery, we're going to be weighing those options of what to do with our state water project and how to balance that with desal operations. I think both of those offer different elements of reliability. Certainly, desal is a much more reliable source. It has a much fewer threats than the state water project. But as I talked about initially, when your state water is costing roughly around $1,000 an acre foot, and desal is costing you about $1,500 an acre foot. We're kind of balancing those costs, and it's still working through those issues. And I think that's part of what we're working on with this update to our long range plan.
Tiffany, you're on mute.
Thank you. Someone asked could you repeat the date that technical memo in November will be available?
We expect to release a series of technical memos in early November.
And would, for the public to view those, should they be attending the Water Commission meeting or City Council meeting?
So that's a good question. We'll make them available on our project website, which is santabarbaraca.gov/watervision. So we've been sharing the tagline Water Vision Month, which is specific to this outreach effort that we're undertaking for the month of October. But we do have a full project website, which is the santabarbaraca.gov/watervision. And we'll post those technical memorandums on the website. We are going to Water Commission twice in November. Actually, we're going to have a special Water Commission meeting. So November 12th, and then our regularly scheduled November 19th meeting, where we'll be talking about our future supply portfolio analysis and also the climate change analysis. So that's also a good way to see that information presented and to see the discussions that happen amongst our policy, again, amongst our water commissioners during that presentation.
And if you haven't already, for those who haven't signed up, you can go to the Water Vision website and sign up to receive any notifications if information is added to those sites. So you don't have to sit there and go keep checking every day in November. We may get it up at the end of October, who knows? But you set those settings, go ahead and sign up, and it will send you an email letting you know we've added that additional content.
Great reminder. It looks like we've powered through all of the questions. So we're just a little over the 45 minutes. So Joshua, do you want to close this out?
Yeah, I thank everyone today for participating, your questions. I'm hoping we keep that going. I understand we have a really complicated water system. I look at some of these folks who strictly have just groundwater, and it's just a much more simplistic way to approach it. But we have developed this diverse supply because of the unique location of Santa Barbara. What makes it beautiful makes it complicated to get water to. And so with that, we appreciate your interest and we hope you'll continue to follow and work with us. As mentioned, we've got a Water Commission meeting coming up in November, and then we'll be at Council in December, and then another meeting in January. So lots of opportunities to engage and learn about the city's water supply planning, and please don't hesitate to get involved on our Pinpoint website and provide comments and questions. We are looking at those, and we're going to be pulling those together and consolidating them and making sure that we're responsive to all the issues that are brought up. And with that, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.